Hello.
Hello.
So, this week we are looking at close to 2 in 10 Fife homes actually fail to sell. And that's maybe a stat that you weren't expecting to see. But before we do get into it and get into the numbers, let's QVT. So there we
An
go.
interesting one.
Absolutely, it is, and probably something that people don't consider. But probably the $1,000,000 question here is, how do you actually beat those odds, perhaps? Because let's face it, when most people decide to put the Fife home on the market, they assume one thing: it's going to sell. We hear it day in, day out. You know, my house will sell, no problem. My house will sell. Da 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 da. If we had £1 for every time we heard that, we wouldn't be sitting here. We wouldn't be sitting here. And after all, you would think to yourself, why wouldn't it? You know, you instruct that estate agent, the board goes up, photos appear on the portals, the listing goes live, viewings happen, and offers are made. It sounds simple. However, sometimes it is not. And that's where that 2 in 10 Fife homes fail to sell. Because what most Fife homeowners never get told is actually the real probability of you selling and moving. And that's looking at every Fife estate agent, because actually, over the last 2 years, your chances of selling and moving your Fife home have been 81.7%. So you're probably thinking, what about the remainder? And that remainder is your 18.3% of homes, i.e., just under 2 in 10, fail to sell, which is actually withdrawing from the market. Now, just for context, when we say Fife, we mean your KY 1 to 12 and your 14 to 16. But those chances do vary massively from property to property and circumstances. And it's perhaps not all this. There's a really important thing to note here. It's not all just doom and gloom. It's not perhaps at fault of where people automatically go and fault the estate agent. That is absolutely not the case. There can be contributing factors like circumstances change. It could be something on the seller's side. Don't automatically assume it is one, something wrong with the property, or two, something wrong with the estate agent. You know, at the end of the day, whether you sell your home or not, it almost comes down to two things: the marketing of your home and the pricing. And this is something we speak day in, day out about, when we've done shows on it, even up until recently, that you can go back and watch. And it's all about realistic price point, because every property is unique, whether it be location, condition, layout, the presentation, and even the timing that you go to market is all it's a crucial contributing factors to the success of the property and the marketing. And interestingly, we were asked in terms of the price banding and how much that makes a difference to a property saleability. And people may think it shouldn't, but it really, really does, because affordability comes into play with it, and actually the demographic who can afford that affordability, and what is the ceiling price from that area. So there is all different stories. But Perrie, what share with us, obviously, some of those stories and what the Fife market's like.
Yeah, I think for me as well as it being the price point, you're absolutely right when you talk about the fact that it's price point, where you fall in the demographic, but actually it's also your property type. And we did that show last week, Sophie, didn't we, in regards to semi-detached, terraced apartments, detached properties, larger properties. Price banding very much came into it as well. So it's not just the amount, it's actually what you have to sell as well. So two outcomes to putting your house on the market is that, let's start with it, it's really simple. When you list your home for sale, the two things you hope are going to happen is that you exchange your missives, you complete the house sale, and you move to your next home. The alternative is, which is the not so positive, depending on your reason, of course, is that you withdraw it because it's unsold. And when we talk about unsold, we don't necessarily mean that you didn't get offers. What we're saying is perhaps you did sell it, and actually what then ended up happening is everything in your life changed. And so you suddenly think, well, hang on a minute, I don't want to sign missives now because we're not really in a position now to move because of whatever it is that's happened in your life event. So when we say unsold comes with that caveat of there's reasons for the unsoldness of it. It's not necessarily that they didn't get offers. And I think that's really important to look at as well. So it's important to look at the data, I think, in understanding what does that really mean for me if I am a seller and maybe I have sold and I'm thinking about unsold, or if I've been on the market a while and I haven't sold yet, how does that impact me? I've maybe not had offers. What do I need to do? So again, it's good to look at that and how that's comparing against the rest of Fife. So if we look at the Fife property market, and that's the agents all over Fife, over the last 2 years, Sophie rightly said, 2 in 10 people are not completing. For whatever reason they decided not to complete, there could be reasons for that. But what we've done is we've looked at that. We've looked at the success rates as well. So what's sold versus exchanged versus completed versus how many were actually withdrawn and never sold. So again, it's good for you to understand those things as well. So the results are pretty eye-opening, actually. We were quite surprised by this when we looked at it. But the Fife selling odds price bracket is the thing that you want to be looking at. So if we look at properties, for instance, up to 250,000 across Fife over the last 2 year window that we're talking about, 7,500 just over Fife homes sold and moved. Just over 1,200 unsold and withdrew. So that's 86.2% completed. That's on your price bracket of your up to 250. So you would expect that value of property to be a kind of high completion point. So they're sitting at 86.2, which actually bucks that trend of the 82% as an average we were speaking about. But then if we go to the increased price point of between 250 and 500, for instance, there was 2,000 and nearly 400 properties sold and moved, 910 unsold and withdraw. That's 72.2%. So that's literally 3 in 10 properties at that price bracket did complete over the last 2 years. Yeah. If we then look at the 500 to the 1 million plus, 365 properties sold and completed, you would expect those numbers to come down because we don't all have £1 million homes, unfortunately. 170 of those unsold or withdrew. That drops to 68.2%. If you then look at the 1 million plus properties, there was 42 of those listed in Fife that sold and moved, 22 unsold or withdrew. That's 65.6%. So that's like literally 4 in 10. Yeah, that's quite a stark number, isn't it? So in simple terms, if your home is worth under 250,000, you have more than a 4 in 5 chance of moving. So that's a positive way to look at it. If you're between 250 and 500, you're nearly a 3 in 4 chance of selling. If you're over 500, you've got a 2 in 3 chance of selling. And if you're 1 million plus, you've got a 2 in 3 chance of getting moved. So that's quite a stark difference, isn't it? So literally 1 in 3 are not moving. Yep. When you say it like that versus 2 in 10, that's quite a big difference, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So it's not just Fife. So, is this something that we're seeing across the property market as a whole, Sophie?
Well, you might be thinking, but actually the same pattern plays across Scotland. So to give you an idea and help you compare, that first bracket up to 250,000, Scotland is sitting at 83.6%. Nationally, it's 62.9%. So you can see the difference there. And that's just in the first price banding. Then your 250 to 500, Scotland sits at 74.9%. Nationally, it's 53.7%. And then
that's nearly half of them, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yep, absolutely. And then when you go to your next bracket again, you go to your 500 up to your million. Scotland, don't forget, was 67.5%, and nationally it's 44.8%. So again, a difference. And then when you go to 1 million plus, Scotland sits at 58.4%, but nationally it drops so low to 35.1%. So you can see such a difference in there.
That's a big one, actually, when you look at those nationals against Scotland, but also if you look at the nationals on Fife, because Fife actually, in most of those brackets, were higher than the Scotland average. So for instance, if you look at the 250 up to point, Fife 86.2%, Scotland 83.6%, nationally 62.9%. That's a big jump, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. So then asking prices increase, and then is it fair to say that odds of your home selling fall? So then why do higher priced Fife homes struggle to sell? Is it because the higher up the ladder you go, the smaller the buyer pool, perhaps? And there are fewer proceedable buyers. You know, affordability does tighten. It's not just your average family income and household. The mortgage stress tests get harder. As well, think about it, the higher the price point, the more obviously land and building transaction tax, or perhaps if you're out with Scotland, your stamp duty, that goes up as well. Even wealthy buyers do become more selective when borrowing costs do rise, because then all the costs that come with that. Yet, the biggest thing with the most expensive homes is that they are also harder to value and price just right. And we do see that when you get to the higher price points, and because they do tend to be more unique, bespoke properties. And sometimes when they are like that, there's obviously, if you're doing your areas where there is just your 250 below, that is a ceiling price, and they do kind of all go for around the same. But when you are getting higher and higher price points, is it perhaps the location, the views, you know, the quality, the standard, and that's where it does make them harder to value. So some estate agents like to have those prestigious homes on the market, perhaps for status, and also do they perhaps over-egg them, but then actually over-egging them to look like they can do these prestigious and big high price points just means that they're stuck with it, and then properties fall into obviously the statistics of they're not selling so they fall through. And
I think that's a big challenge. That's a big challenge with the pricing of the larger properties, because obviously the multiples are not there either. So we often talk, Sophie, don't we, when we're doing these shows, about, as an agent, how you prepare for your valuation, that your visit to your client and all your comparables that you put together. But if you're trying to compare £1 million houses with £1 million houses, that doesn't happen a great deal, does it? And you're primarily probably in the hotspots of St Andrews, Ely, maybe London Links if you're down by the golf course. So actually, those rarely come up, don't they? So actually, how do you then just understand how you can compare that to the market? It's a tricky game, isn't it? And it's so easy to maybe over-egg it, as you say, and then actually, yes, it looks like the dream home and it's great to have it on your website, but the reality is it's not so great if it doesn't sell. Because there is a perception, isn't it? It doesn't matter how much we educate ourselves, there is a perception that it just didn't sell, irrelevant of what goes on in the background.
Correct. And especially when we can't always divulge what's gone around in the background. Obviously, it's our client's confidentiality. You can't just disclose what's happened. So as an outsider, they just go, what's wrong? So absolutely, that is just the mindset. But obviously we've touched on overpricing then, Perrie. What is the danger of overpricing your Fife home?
I think this is the key, isn't it? I think certainly in 2021, when the market was red hot and we all felt that pain of trying to buy a house, if you were a seller, it was fantastic. But if you were buying a house, it was really difficult. But many sellers did get away with ambitious pricing. And agents, were getting away with some ambitious stuff as well, because actually there was such limited stock that anybody was willing to pay whatever they had to pay to basically secure a house. So buyers had basically the freedom of money to make their choices. Mortgage rates were dirt cheap as well, weren't they? I mean, literally, we moved just not long after that, and my mortgage rate was like 1%. And my mortgage rate now, I think, is up at 6%. So, and it's slowly coming down. So you can see big differences there as well. So not only was money cheaper to borrow, you pretty much could offer whatever you needed to offer to get a house if you were fortunate enough to be in the position to pay over the home report. So it was a really difficult, challenging time to actually get those pricings right. But when stock is low and limited, it's almost, I don't want to say it, but it's almost easier to overprice something, because actually buyers need to move still and circumstances dictate that. But I think, we're not in that market anymore. And I think people need to be realistic about where we're at. In 2025, Fife market, pricing it too high is the fastest way to end up with somebody withdrawing. or you're just not selling because the price is too much, and then the seller has an expectation of what they think their property is worth, and they have maybe planned their next life on that number. And it's human nature, isn't it, Sophie? You hear a number and it's just magic in your head, isn't it? And you just think, oh, fantastic, we could do X, Y, or Z with that. Suddenly that number, mentally you're already spending it and planning, aren't you? You know, if Jim was on here, he'd be saying that's absolutely not what you should do. You should save it all, invest it all. But human nature is that, isn't it? People want to have nice things and they will automatically think, right, we've got this to do X, Y, and Z with. And then suddenly, actually, you don't get that offer. And then suddenly your agents have to come to say to you, we might need to look at realigning your price, try and push it up again for you. And then they don't want to do that. So then they withdraw. And that's the key in this market today, is that if you do overprice it, the likelihood is you're going to be in that situation where you end up withdrawing and be on that kind of stats of the 19% people that don't move. Once your property goes stale as well, price drops sometimes can fail to undo that damage. So, you know, when we look at doing price realignments, even if you want to swap to another agent, you know, potentially, we often say this, if someone's marketed previously and then, you know, they come to us and say, actually, it's just not selling with that agent, can you help us? That's a really tough decision for us because a lot of the damage has been done with the marketing, isn't it? And we've got to revitalise some interest in that property. And that's why, obviously, our video work is paramount in achieving that, but it can't always be done, can it? So that's a real tough one. The buyer's confidence is also weakened as well when they see that house time and time again, and reducing again, because in their mind as well, they're thinking, actually, I'm not going to go for that yet. I'm going to wait and see if this reduces even further. So in their head, they're thinking, I'm going to get a bargain. When the reality is actually the house wasn't priced right to begin with. But in their mindset, they're thinking, well, it was on at 300. If I could get it for 250, I'm happy. But actually the point of the matter is it probably should never have been listed at 300 to begin with. And I'm just using those as an example number, of course. The house also lingering unsold, again, can be a kind of negative feel, unless it's really a quirky one, or it's requiring some work, or it's an unusual one that, you know, the buyer's not there yet, maybe just not seen it yet, because sometimes as well, it's not how long your house has been on the market, it's how long your buyer's been there. So it's about how did they get seen, isn't it? But I think what this data does tell us is exactly what is happening is almost half of the sellers in certain price brackets aren't moving. And that's a little bit scary when you look at it in those terms, isn't it? So picking you're a right agent, I think it matters more than ever now. Picking the estate agent that you can trust and work with really is crucial, I think, in this current market when we're seeing a lot more property coming to market. What would your thoughts be on that, Sophie?
Yeah, and this is brilliant that it kind of flows into this, because actually Perrie and I did a show on this last week about picking an estate agent and the 15 questions that you should be asking. So if you are considering selling, then definitely go back and watch that, because that was a brilliant show of everything to think about, questions to ask. So definitely do go back and watch that. But picking your estate agent is absolutely crucial. And one of the biggest misconceptions, again, that we find is that sellers just hear this high number and pick that agent based on that really high number, but price doesn't always equal value. And just let that sink in, because value is also what somebody is willing to pay, and getting that buyer to step forward takes more than clicking a button, putting the listing live and crossing your fingers. Absolutely, we can value that property and we can put the home report on it, but actually it's the reach and the people that it gets pushed out to that then gets buyers through the door that have been qualified, that we have done our due diligence on, and then us as the agents do the viewing because we know that property inside out, we know the location, and then we start negotiations when they're standing in front of us. Is the agent that's done the highest price point just to win the listing going to do that for you? And that is something that you really need to think about. Don't just get sidetracked by this out of the kind of cloud plucked number, because in this market, experienced Fife estate agents do 3 things that make the difference. They price it correctly from day one. They qualify and manage buyers effectively. And that can be one of your questions as well. If you are interviewing, we say it, interview your estate agent. When you're speaking with your estate agent, what questions and how are they qualifying? Or is it a case of Joe Bloggs phones up, say they want a viewing, be at perfect crack on through the door, and they're not even in a position that they can actually proceed, which just gets your hopes up. It's a waste of your time, and you're no further forward. And then that agent as well, they negotiate firmly and they protect your sale right through while it's going through conveyancing until misses are signed and until everything's over the line. And the best estate agents need to understand the psychology behind their buyer and their behavior and what makes them tick and what are they looking for, what are their objections that perhaps we're all ready to handle because we know what they're looking for. We manage expectations, both as you as a seller, we keep you informed and we help you make those decisions, so we manage that, but we also manage the buyer's expectations. And it is about creating that competition, not just that initial interest. And that is where picking the right estate agent is absolutely crucial. And it's detrimental to avoid you falling into that bracket of withdrawn from market. So what are you doing about it? So as I mentioned, we did a show last week, Perrie and I, so do go back and watch that because that was a brilliant one. Obviously, every home is absolutely unique and they have their own quirks and selling points, but statistics don't lie. But, you know, every property is different, and the data that we've looked at, the border trends across Fife, and you might have a home that perhaps defies these odds, and you might also have a home that, you know, falls victim to them. But what matters is not just knowing these statistics, but understanding how they actually apply to you and your home, the location and the condition. But what is the real question here, Perrie?
Oh, the real question people often think is, what price do I ask for? But actually, what you should be asking is, what price gives me the best odds for a successful move? Because at the end of the day, you're marketing your property for a reason. There's a life event that's making you want to move. So it's not about get me the most that you can get me. What's the best price to go at? And let's just go there. Don't get me wrong, sometimes we will start, you know, you want to shoot for the stars and you'll catch the moon on the way down sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that it's realistic, and you want to be asking the question, what price gives me the best chances of success in moving? Because actually I'm at a critical point in life and I need to move. I had this conversation with one of our sellers recently, and they said, you know, I was kind of really, this was that and this was that, and I was hoping for this. And my question back to them was, how much do you want to move? What is happening in your world today? Why we're selling the property? What you need to achieve? Does that number work for you? And they said, yeah, it does work for me.
There you go.
And it made the difference. We were literally had succeeded and actually exceeded expectations to start with. But it's like that comment I made earlier on. People sometimes will think, oh, but do you think we can just push it for that and push it for this? And actually the reality is, look, you've got a great number. At the beginning, when we started the journey, you said, if I get that number, I'll be over the moon. You've now got that number. You've also secured your next place. So let's just get moving.
Yeah.
And that's the key, isn't it? So that needs to be done, because nobody puts their home on the market just for it to sit there at the end of the day. You know, the goal is not to be on the market. The goal is to be sold. The goal is to get moving. It's to start your next chapter in your life. It's just everything I just said then. It's about, this is what I was wanting to achieve, and now you've helped me achieve it. And I don't know about you, but that's the real thing I enjoy about this job. Is right at the beginning, we start that journey with them. We understand what they're trying to achieve, and then making that happen is really fantastic. So the pricing correctly from day one still remains for me the most powerful decision that you can make together, because it will help you control as a seller whether you move or you don't. And I think that's the thing. It's not about what asking prices you place on your home. It's about what you end up with, what you've sold for, and the real cost of moving as well. You know, there's reasons for doing that, as I say. So what does that look like? Is the gap between the two too large, or does the gap between them be manageable for you and allow you to do what you need to do? And I think that's the bit that sometimes people do forget in the journey. They've got that in their mind at the beginning, but then as they go through it, they suddenly, because there's maybe been an influx of viewers and we've had multiple offers, and then suddenly they get all excited and think, oh, hang on, do you think we could just hang on for a wee bit more? And then, you know, sometimes you just need to have that level-headed conversation and say, well, hang on, where were we at the beginning? you would have been delighted if this is where we'd ended up. So there sometimes has to be that tough conversation as well. But that will only come if you've made the right choice and you're working together, agent
Absolutely.
and seller and buyer. And I think that's a big thing. And I think for me, that's the biggest thought from this discussion today, is that working together will get you what you need to be doing and where you need to be going. And having those frank discussions, I think, makes a big difference.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
What's your final thoughts on that?
Final thoughts is, like we always say, make informed decisions and educate yourself. And if you don't know where to start with that education, just reach out to us and we're more than happy to lead you in the right direction and put you in touch with the correct contacts to help you make those decisions, whether it be a solicitor, whether it be a mortgage advisor. We can help with all of that. But make informed decisions, because it's your biggest asset. It's your biggest asset in life. It's a big thing to do. So entrust somebody, as you said, Perrie, the relationship piece, trust somebody to do that. So definitely, this has been a great show. And as we say, there's obviously ones that we've done previously that as well really do support you with next steps.
Perfect. Good stuff. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. And if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to drop a note to us. And actually, if you've got an experience that's positive, indifferent, not so great, let us know. We're more than happy to hear it and give you some thoughts.
Absolutely.
Take care. Until next time.
Bye for now.